Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Scrimshaw Show. My name's Evan Scrimshaw. I usually have this guy on to just do weekly picks, but we are kind of sort of rounding a corner in the NFL season. Obviously, Kansas City Buffalo was last week. Next week's Thanksgiving. Bunch of teams on bye. So we're still going to be recording the football picks later, but I decided to have Nathaniel Arfin on to sort of take stock of the league, do a bit of like a State of the Union, to deliver information to Congress about what teams we think are sort of, good, actually contenders. Just sort of go through the league, have a convo. We'll do football picks in a second video. That'll come out tomorrow, but Nathaniel Arfin, how are you feeling about the state of the NFL?
It's an interesting year. We're really coming to a time in the NFL where the quarterback play, it's difficult because growing up, we were blessed with elite quarterback play across the board. You had 4 or 5 teams with amazing quarterbacks, and now it's I don't know that there's anyone who I would even classify as an elite quarterback.
I see you've gone from Pat Mahomes is a god to I'm not even sure he's an elite QB in less than a week, so that's fun.
He is a very good quarterback, and of course, what he can do with the ball is outstanding, but I haven't seen it this year. Have you?
No, but then again, I didn't bet them last week, so just saying.
Well, they finally lost, so you got your wish.
Yeah, because they aren't as good as you think. Whatever.
Well, I needed to see it. I didn't think the Bills were very good yet.
In fairness, I'm not positive that the Bills are any fucking great shakes because I don't. Again, the whole thing about not respecting the Chiefs is that the Bills. I'm not suddenly going to be claiming they're the 72 Dolphins just because, or the 85 Bears because they beat a Chiefs team that I don't respect.
And that's kind of my vibe about the league on the whole. It's just there isn't a 72 Dolphins. There's no Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning in the league anymore. It's you look around and there's a lot of competition through attrition. How's that?
Sure. So the general conceit for this podcast is we're going to do inner ring contenders, outer ring contenders, and sort of pretenders as like we're going to classify it. Should we start in the NFC or the AFC?
Let's start in the NFC. I think we have a clearer overall picture in the NFC.
Which is to say there's no competitive wildcard race in the NFC.
Yeah.
So you've got the Vikings, you've got the Vikings at 8-2, Packers 7-3, Commanders 7-4. Those are the 3 teams currently occupying a wild card. Obviously, Minnesota could catch Detroit. Green Bay is not mathematically eliminated from the NFC North title, but I don't think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to win it. Obviously, the Eagles could catch the Commanders, but they're 2 games back in the loss column. And you guys have already beaten them once. Detroit has beaten both Green Bay and Minnesota. But like 7 wins right now is a wild card. Even if Green Bay loses this week to San Francisco, they'd still be 7-4, right? 4 lost teams. Here's the only teams that are really could contend. You've got Tampa Bay, 4-6, probably not. Seriously going to fight for a wild card. Got the Cowboys are 3-7. Do you think they're a serious wild card contender? With White Boy Cooper Rush
on the IL. Cooper Rush for the rest of the season. If I were a Cowboys fan, I would be
not playing.
they're a bad team. Every single aspect about the Cowboys is falling apart right now. There is nothing good happening there.
But like,
you're playing for
you traded a 4th or a 5th round pick for, I think it was a 4th, Trey Lance, right? Who was a high draft pick, but everybody knew was a bit of a project and needed to sit. You have him on your team. You have a wasted season. You're probably going to have to hire Deion Sanders this offseason to get his kid a quarterback, even though his kid's a fraud, but whatever. That is the kind of thing Jerry Jones is going to end up doing because it's a big fucking splash. Okay? Here's my thing. How are you not just running Trey Lance out there and seeing if you have something, seeing if the potential that led to him being the 3rd overall pick, how are you not just running him out there and seeing?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense unless Trey Lance is actually completely terrible and or hurt in some way that we're not aware of.
So the real mess in the NFC obviously is the West. 6-4 Cardinals, 5-5, 5-5, and 5-5 for everybody else. The Niners have the best point differential in the division, plus 28. They're 5-5. They can't seem to put any momentum together. Here's where we'll start. I think Detroit, obviously, they're currently the 1 seed. They're basically in cruise control. They just beat the Jaguars by they just dropped a 50 burger on the Jaguars. I'm gonna put your Eagles in the inner ring of contenders right now. Is there anybody else in your mind that deserves that sort of inner ring contender status? Or is the NFC really 2 teams and then just a bunch of fake contenders?
It's really hard for me to say that it's even 2 teams because being an Eagles fan, I watch this team on a weekly basis. And obviously they're in the inner ring here because they're the 2 seed and we're 8-2 and all that, but they just don't feel like that great a team. And to be honest, same with the Lions. But we can't go all negative. I do think the Vikings are.
I'm sorry. What is the case for the Lions not being a truly great team? Their offense has been elite for 2 months now.
Their offense has been elite. Their defense has looked suspect. And they're playing a lot of teams right now with weak interior rush defense. And that plays up to their strength, which is their very good running backs.
Yeah, they're also scoring 50 a game despite, Jared Goff barely throwing the ball.
I'm sorry. Does Doug Peterson still have a job today on Wednesday, November the 20th? Speaking of scoring 50 points.
I somehow think he still does.
Just unbelievable.
Still the head coach.
That is outstanding.
I mean, you do not get to disrespect your coach.
Oh, I love Doug Peterson forever, but the Lions just scored 50 on the 2-9 Jaguars. They're an atrocious team.
I would like to point out the Detroit's second in defensive EPA so far this season.
Wow.
Now they are
Hutchinson.
Now they are ninth. Now they are ninth in success rate, and they don't have Hutchinson. So
yeah,
and Anzalone, but I don't know if I'm pretty sure Anzalone is out for a while with the broken forearm.
But it really comes back to what I was saying about quarterback play. It's hard for me to believe in a Jared Goff-led team and call them a true contender. And I think once they start playing more playoff caliber teams, which at this point, who is that? It's gonna start showing up.
They beat the Packers. They beat the Vikings.
Yeah.
Like,
and coming up, they have Indy, Chicago, Green Bay will be one to watch on Thursday Night Football in December, and then going into Buffalo will be one to watch.
No, Buffalo's going to Detroit.
Oh, my mistake.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, like, the Lions do have a bunch of tougher games. Like, they're gonna have to prove themselves. I think that my thing with Goff is, like, at what point do we need to stop treating Goff as like a fun story and just treat him like the quarterback he has put up the numbers of?
And I mean, he's certainly outplayed his co-drafty Carson Wentz and deserves at least
everyone keeps bringing back up like the sort of like the LA time and getting benched at the end, and everyone is quote unquote waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin. And like, Lord knows I wrote that many times to the Lions, but like, at what point do we actually, like, at what point do we stop treating Jared Goff being good like some sort of like, Make-A-Wish promise, and actually treat him like the seriously very good, quarterback? Like, I mean, I guess we're disrespectful to Tua, and they're in obviously in similar circumstances, which is to say, very good Shanahan sort of like Shanahan disciple offenses, very, very efficient offenses, and very offenses that scheme up a lot of open receivers in relatively easy throws, right? But like, so yeah, in fairness, it's not like we treat Tua like he's fucking God's gift, or Brock Purdy like he's God's gift, when Goff has been consistently, reliably putting up, top 5, top 8 EPA performances the last 2 years. But then again, I guess we don't treat Brock Purdy or Tua like that when they're in the same thing, where it's like, well, with the weapons of the offense, you should be in the top whatever.
And Detroit does have some really, really great weapons. Gibbs is really good. David Montgomery is really good. Jameson Williams has been great this year when he hasn't been mysteriously arrested and suspended. Strange stuff there, right? Laporta is good. St. Brown is excellent. They have a lot of weapons on this team, and they've done a lot to support Jared Goff. What it comes down to for me is, in the playoffs, does someone like Goff get it done? And can the offensive weapons support him to the extent that they need to? And as we've seen with guys like Jalen Hurts, and this is why I'm so disillusioned about it, is it's harder to get it done when it comes to the playoffs. And I'm wary of the Lions for that reason.
In fairness, they did just win 2 rounds last year.
And, I'm saying this while we're talking about the Eagles as being an inner ring team, and I'm calling out Jalen Hurts as a quarterback who's not able to get it done in playoff situations. I don't know if Hurts can, because the thing is that 2 years ago, obviously, he did make it to Super Bowl. He put up 34 points, right? Yeah. Like, if you guys could get a stop and or the refs didn't fuck you, we'll see. And then last year, what was he supposed to do? Like, respectfully, what the fuck was he supposed to do last year? It didn't even have AJ Brown in the wild card game. That team was very clearly falling apart by December. Yeah. Like, I love how we basically were like, these are the 2 inner-ring contenders. And then it's like, are they even inner-ring contenders? Yes.
Minnesota, I can't make the case. They're very clearly not as good as they were at the beginning of the season, right? Darnold, whatever Darnold magic was conjured up, he is now back to being a mediocre to good quarterback, as opposed to being a there were people with, like there were MVP tickets floating around, at significant value. And I think that is sort of mostly been put to bed now. My hot take, and this is, partially maybe a biased Packer fan thing, and I don't think either of these two teams are entering contenders. Packers are a better playoff team than the Vikings, right?
I think there's a case to be made that the Packers are starting to warm up later in the year, and that's going to be to their benefit.
If they beat San Francisco, I'll agree with this opinion, but they just needed a blocked field goal to beat the Bears.
But yeah, and that's really it with the Packers is we're going to start seeing, starting now, what kind of team they really are. Right, you have the Niners coming up. You have who's after that? There was a couple big ones. So Niners, you have the Lions in 2 weeks, and then the Vikings and Bears to end the season. So it'll really be, there's 3 games there that'll test the mettle of this team and show us who they are.
Yeah, and like to be clear, if Green Bay had 2 red zone. Or had 2 goal to go situations that ended with 0 points. If we score 10 out of those 2 possessions and not, go for a 4th down and get stopped at the 1 or throw the interception, like that's a very different game. And, Green Bay probably, covers the spread. So like, I'm not trying to doom about the Packers, but like Jordan Love is still probably a 2nd tier quarterback. Right? Like I think he is a step down from like even your Goff tier. Let alone from like the Allen Mahomes tier. And so given that, like I'm just still Green Bay, I think, are pretty clearly an Eder tier. Do you want to make the case for Caleb Williams and the Commanders?
Jaden Williams.
What did I say?
Caleb Williams.
Jaden Daniels.
Wow, look at us.
Washington. Do you want to make a case for Washington?
The Washington football team, until last week, 2 weeks ago, looked like a real contender. Now I don't know. They look like they're on the outside looking in. This is still a young team. I see them making strides, but they traded away pieces from their defense just last year. This is clearly a team who's trying to rebuild. Terry McLaurin's a great wide receiver, but they need more weapons to give to Jaden Daniels, and I think that was on display last week as well. Zach Ertz can still find the seam, but he still doesn't get any yards after the catch, and he's old now, and he's slow. He's looking like prime Jason Witten. And that's, not a knock on him. It's for his age. He's doing great. But Noah Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus can't be the 2 and 3 option on a contending team. They need more weapons. They need to do more to support that defense, get some linebackers. Bobby Wagner had a pretty good game, but beyond that, they need more to contend.
Yeah, I think my thing is Marshawn Lattimore will help the secondary, but like it's clear that Daniels is either injured, working through something, hitting a bit of a rookie wall. I don't really know. But like he has not been nearly as efficient the last few weeks. He's running a little bit less, which isn't helping his efficiency. And frankly, the quality of competition's been higher, right? 2 weeks ago was Pittsburgh. Last week was Philadelphia. I think they'll be fine. I certainly think they're going to make the playoffs. I think some of the like overwrought whatever. I mean, they still have game and a half edge on everybody in the AFC West, which we're going to get to in a minute.
But the big stat that stands out to me from the last two performances, which were losses, is the fact that he went down 3 times. He was sacked 3 times in both games. And that shows up, especially for these younger quarterbacks, and Jalen Daniels isn't a big guy either. They're going to take those hits a little bit harder.
Yep. And, it is a different thing getting tackled by NFLers than college kids, right?
Yeah.
Do they count as an outer ring contender, or are we putting them in the pretender category?
I'm going to call them a pretender. I just don't see them elevating their game to a necessary level to win a playoff game.
Okay. Minnesota and Green Bay are both outer ring contenders, I assume.
Yeah, that's how I would put it.
As somebody who picked and bet on the Falcons last week, would you like to put them in the pretender category, or
I really hope
apologize to everybody for being an idiot?
I would like to apologize for being an idiot, and I would also love if somehow the Saints could pull off that playoff spot. Oh, sorry, that is the NFC South, because the NFC South,
why do you want the Saints in the playoffs?
What's that?
Why do you want the Saints in the playoffs? They fucking suck.
Because it would be funny to watch Taysom Hill doing his Taysom Hill things in the playoffs. Did you see that trick play last week? Great use of Taysom Hill's flexibility.
I watched 0 seconds that weren't when it was on Red Zone.
Fair enough. But I really don't care about whoever comes out of the South or the West. I guess if the 49ers...
Well, no, don't go to the West yet. I'm trying to dispose of the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be real. They have a 2-game advantage in the South. They're probably the team. But, can we just agree anybody who wins the South are frauds?
Yes, the South is just a terrible pile of terribleness.
Yeah. Have the Niners actually shown anything this year to justify the idea that they are any level of contender? Okay? Because this is the thing. Obviously, huge amounts of talent, right? This is a team that has, made 2 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. They haven't been particularly healthy, which, in theory, if they get healthy, could be, interesting. However, Nick Bosa now has a new oblique injury.
Oh.
I am trying, still no word on whether Bosa is going to play or not on Sunday, according to PFF. Or not PFF. PFT, Pro Football Talk. But the Niners have been fairly mediocre. Why are we pretending that they haven't been?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely fair. You look at their wins, they've come against the Jets, the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Cowboys, and the Bucks. So they're not exactly coming away with big wins against tough opponents here.
The underlying metrics look better. 12th defensively, 9th offense, 6th offensively, and Brock Purdy is 7th in the league. All of those by EPA. So those are better than a 5-5 team. But even then, the Niners offense is usually top 5 and usually top 3, right? Brock Purdy led the league in EPA last year. He's now 7th. The defense, usually top 5. It's 12th by EPA. Even if they quote unquote get right, is there anything more than maybe they win the 3-6 or 4-5 game? At best?
Yeah, that would be their best chance. And I don't know that. Who are they winning against right now? Are they beating
They're
the
not
Vikings?
beating Detroit. They're not beating Philadelphia. I mean, if Bosa's not 100%, they're not beating Green Bay.
Yeah. And I don't think that they would beat Minnesota.
Yeah. Minnesota would be home field would matter a lot there, because if it's in Minnesota, that has like 7 false starts.
Yeah.
Written all over it.
Absolutely.
Minnesota really needs to win the NFC North, because I think their only path is home field, because those fans up in Minnesota are insane. In a good way. But I don't know that they can pull this off on the road. Does anybody else in the NFC West intrigue you in the slightest? Do you want to make a case for anybody else?
The Rams aren't terrible, but I don't know. It's the same kind of thing as the 49ers. Realistically, whoever comes out of the South, the West, is going to be up against it. I don't see any of them beating any of the teams that we've mentioned as contenders.
Or 14th offensively, 18th defensive, 19th defensively. Stafford's 18th in the league by EPA. Like, what are any of these teams?
Yeah, no, there's no contender amongst the West, barring some shenanigans down the stretch.
Yeah, Seahawks are like 18th in both offense and defense. Like, God, that was just a really depressing run through. Should we give the Cardinals credit? They're 6-4. They did beat the Niners, but again, is beating the Niners that impressive? Also, they only beat the Niners because Jake Moody was hurt, and so the Niners didn't have a kicker for like the second half of that game.
Yeah, they played some interesting games, and Kyler's not as bad as I thought he was coming into the season. But that's about all I'll take away from this year from the Cardinals.
I mean, Cardinals Seahawks this Sunday feels like that's going to potentially be important, but then you've got Vikings, Seahawks again, Patriots. Honestly, the Cardinals kind of have a cupcake schedule down the stretch. So 2 at the Seahawks, Vikings in the middle, Patriots, Panthers, Rams, and Niners.
Wow.
That's actually a pretty easy schedule.
Yeah.
I guess is the advantage of playing a last play schedule.
Yep, the parody of the NFL in action.
Jesus, well, they might win the division. Anyways, they're frauds. Okay, let's get to the AFC, where there's like more competitive races for these final spots, and 2, I think there's going to be more that we disagree on. I have Washington in the outer ring contenders just because Dan Daniels has game-breaking ability, and he could theoretically just fuck shit up.
That's fair enough.
Bills are my inner ring contenders. That's it.
I think that's fair.
I think the Bills are definitively the best team in football, and if they don't win the Super Bowl, like, it will be an undeserved win for anybody else.
I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, because it's football, weird stuff happens.
They are head and shoulders above every other team.
I would agree with you on that. Having watched that Chiefs game last week, it's pretty clear. The Bills are the best team in football, and they need to stay healthy. They need to keep the momentum up. But looking at their schedule, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to. Though I suspect the December 15th game will get flexed into prime time. They're playing the Lions in Detroit, so that'll be probably one of the better games this season heading into the playoffs.
Sure, and I think that'll probably decide whether the Bills can get the 1 seed or not. I think the thing for me is just like the Bills did all of that without Dalton Kincaid, right? Their defense is proving to be efficient enough. And I think the big thing for me is just like Look, the interception risk is always there, but like, is there a quarterback that we actually trust other than Mahomes, who just does not have weapons this year? Like, I'm sorry, third in offensive EPA. Like, is there a reason to trust another quarterback over Josh Allen?
No, there is not. And this
again, defensively, 2 top 10 units. Like, what are we doing here?
There's
everyone being like, "Oh, this was a good loss for the Chiefs." Even the fucking media narrative wasn't about the Bills being good. I think people are massively sleeping on this team. The Bills are an incredibly good team, and we need to start fucking acting like it.
Well, it's just they finally figured out that they can run the football with someone other than Josh Allen. James Cook has had a decent year, and he's breaking off chunky gains whenever he touches the ball. They need to keep going with James Cook. They need to keep up this mixed offense. They finally brought in some good weapons in Amari Cooper. They're a very, very good offensive team. Yeah, and like you said, there's no quarterback in the league I would rather have than Josh Allen right now.
Okay, do you want to make the case for Kansas City being an inner-ring contender? Like, make the case for that people that make the case that everyone is correct to not write off the Chiefs.
Okay, when does the Eras Tour come to an end?
So not this upcoming weekend, not the weekend after, but like December 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that.
The final show is December 8th in Vancouver. It's
the same weekend. It's the same weekend as the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That is why I know this fact.
And the Chiefs are playing the Chargers. After that, I think we'll have a clear indication of who this team wants to be. I think Taylor Swift is the deciding factor in who the Kansas City Chiefs will be going into the playoffs. And
so what you're saying is that Travis Kelce can only perform when he has access to regular sex.
Well, I'm saying it doesn't hurt to be near someone you love.
I mean, in fairness, how many hours a week do you think they're actually spending together?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's not a good time for Travis right now.
I mean, he's old, he's bad, he's getting outplayed by Noah Gray. Yeah. Anyway, this is not a case that the Chiefs are going to be good, which is what I asked you to make.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Isaiah Pacheco is still hurt. Yeah, I'm gonna.
She should be coming. Rashid should be coming soon, right?
Rashid Rice should. Yeah. What's
I'm googling his thing.
They need speed. They need an over-the-top threat, and they also need a possession receiver really bad.
They also need Xavier Worthy to remember that you need to get 2 feet in the NFL.
Yeah, as
somebody who has a lot of friends who went to the University of Texas, and therefore a lot of people in my life who like talking about Xavier Worthy, to me, that was one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen.
It was tough to see.
Oh wow, this article I'm reading is saying that Rice is gone.
Oh,
for the year.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a really hard time making a case that the Chiefs are a great team because we've been kind of seeing them pull out wins by the skin of their teeth on a weekly basis against teams that they should be beating handily, right? They've only won by 6 against Tampa in overtime. They won by 2 in Denver because of a missed field goal. They won by a touchdown against the Raiders. It's the Raiders. I don't know. They're just not that. They're not the Kansas City Chiefs that we have come to know and love under Andy Reid. They're an older, decrepit version of it, and it's starting to show that this is an old team.
I love how you just did the bit that I did to justify betting on the Bills last week, and you just like unironically repeated it.
Well, I mean, look at Chris Jones. He has, what does he have? 10 quarterback hits? Yeah, 10 quarterback hits, 24 tackles. He's just not the impact player that he has been in past years. Their defense isn't what it was, and their offense is showing extreme signs of age.
Yeah.
And they've been hurt.
It's almost like Kansas City is just speed running the Aaron Rodgers experience now, finally, which is to say, either through cap shenaniganery or through just the cap being what it is, and or players wanting a bigger role, you start running out really bad receiving cores, right? And praying to God that a combination of really old, aging talents and unproven young guys can cobble together a good enough set of weapons that having the best quarterback should be able to save you. And spoiler alert, Aaron Rodgers has won Super Bowl, okay?
The Chiefs are and deserve to be recognized as a dynastic team throughout the past few years during the Andy Reid during the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era here, but they're a pretender.
Legacy only gets you so. You're putting them all the way down in pretender?
I do not think that if they were up against the Lions that I would bet on them. I don't think that in a head-to-head matchup with the Eagles that I would bet on the Chiefs. I think that they would lose to anyone in the contender circle in the NFC at this point.
Okay, I think they're an entering contender. I think Mahomes, the respect I have for Mahomes means he can't fall too far down. But I definitely think, and you're with me on this, that the media is massively overrating Kansas City still. Houston, do we believe in them at all?
No.
Okay. Look, man, like
CJ
Stroud is mediocre. You can't lose to the Jets. You can't lose to the Jets and have me take you seriously. I'm sorry, you can't. The fact that they couldn't put away the Lions, they did not score a single point in, was it the second half of that game? Or I think it was the whole second half against Detroit on Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago. And then what did they do last week? Like
the only win that gives me pause is the one against Buffalo.
They beat the shit out of Detroit or Dallas, but who gives a shit? It's the fraud boys.
I mean, they played essentially a kicking match against the Bills and won. That's that was
more about the Bills having their heads up their asses than anything positively useful that the Texans did well. I mean, they barely beat the Jaguars earlier this season. Which, yes, I know the Jags now are not as bad as are now worse than they were then, but like even then, the Jaguars have not been good at really any point this year. Like, what do the Texans do? Like, definitively do well?
Last year, Stroud had a really, really impressive arm. It showed out, and he was a dynamic offensive player. This year, they just haven't been that. They haven't run that offense. I don't know exactly what happened, but they have not beaten a team who I consider good in any way other than the Bills.
I think my thing is like they're just beating up. They're beating up on mostly mediocre teams. I mean, a 3-point game against the Texans. They held it close against Green Bay, but like I don't really respect. Like I'm sort of vaguely wishy-washy on the Packers. Got blown out by the Vikings. Like they're mostly just eating. They're mostly just eating against a bad AFC South schedule, right? 2 wins against the Colts. They've beaten the Jags. They beat the Bears, who I don't think either of us particularly respect, right? Like,
no.
They've got the Titans 2 more times this season. They've got they've got the Jags. Like they're going to win the next 2 weeks. I feel like if you want to try and fade them after they win the next 2 games is probably the answer. But like, what are this team?
And this is kind of the problem with the AFC. There's so much to beat up on versus the NFC, where there's a bunch of false parity. In the AFC, there's this false heavyweight feel to it because you have the Jags, you have the Raiders, you have the Titans, you have the Browns, and the Jets and the Patriots. I mean, this is a really, really bad conference.
And Miami was very bad for a while, and now are like allegedly good. But the Dolphins. It's funny. The Dolphins are probably going to end up like 8-9, 9-8, despite not being an 8 or 9 or 9 or 8 team at any point this season, right? Because they're going to play like a 11-win team when Tua is here, and they're going to have played like a 2-win team when he's gone. So even though they're gonna average out to like 8 wins or whatever, like they were not an 8-win team, really. They were not a mediocre team.
Yeah.
Do we think so? Okay, let's keep going through. Let's just do the AFC North as a combined unit. Do we think the Bengals have a chance? They're 4-7. They would have to run the table. And their remaining schedule looks pretty damn tough from memory. I think they have Bengals scheduled. Sorry, I saw like 5,000 segments on them. Steelers, Cowboys will be a win. Titans will be a win. Browns should be a win. Broncos and then Steelers again. If they need 8 wins, if they need 9 wins to get in, I mean, split against the Steelers, can they beat the Broncos and then sweep the rest?
I think, yeah, you're right that they're going to have to at least split the Steelers. And hopefully for them, it'll come down to the Broncos. But this is the NFC North, and I'm sorry, but I'm not counting out the Browns in terms of being able to knock out the Bengals out of the playoff picture. I don't expect them to win by any means, or the Browns to win the North, but I can definitely see them playing a bit of disruption against the Bengals in their hopes. Now, like you said, the Bengals have looked like they've turned a corner, but they played against the Ravens. They lost against they beat the Raiders. They lost against the Ravens, and they lost to the Chargers. I don't.
The Chargers are a 7-win team. Like, why are we saying, oh, they lost to the Chargers? Like, that's somehow an unimpressive loss.
But their only big victory.
They played the Ravens incredibly close twice.
And that's true, but I think that's more a product of the NFC North. I mean, we say this and it's a cliche, but like it's real.
It's the AFC North, not the NFC. You've screwed it up twice.
I said that twice, yes.
Okay, but like here's the thing though. Like the Bengals really don't have a super impressive win. They just have a bunch of like impressively close losses, right? overtime against the Ravens, losing by a point against the Ravens, losing by a point to the Chiefs. Like, there's not a bunch of impressive losses, but I mean, if McPherson, can make clutch kicks, they would have 2 more wins. They would have beaten the Ravens the first time around, and they would have beaten the Chargers. Like, I don't think the Browns game is a problem. Like, I think the Browns are very clearly, like, quitting on the season. I mean, they can't beat the Saints. You think they're going to be able to beat the Bengals?
That's fair. Yeah, and Joe Burrow, he
leads the league in both passing touchdowns and passing yards.
Yeah, it's he looks like he's turning that corner. Most completions, most yards, most touchdowns, 4 interceptions to 27 touchdowns. That's Nick Foles 2016 level stats.
You just had to bring up your fucking team.
Okay.
AFC North. The Ravens are a game and a half back. They don't have the tiebreak. Is this Pittsburgh's division to win?
It's amazing to me that Pittsburgh has been able to put together the season they have. Mike Tomlin deserves Coach of the Year from where I stand at this point. Russell Wilson hasn't been that impressive, but they're managing to pull out these games.
I mean, I think it's more than, so the case against them is they just kick 6 field goals to beat the Ravens.
And they haven't beaten anyone.
I mean, they just beat the Ravens and the Commanders in back-to-back weeks.
Other than those 2, that's fair.
I mean, lost to the Cowboys isn't that good. They beat the Chargers. Beat the Broncos. Right. Those are 2 playoff teams.
The Broncos in that
beat the Falcons. That's another playoff team.
In the Falcons.
Look, the defense is nasty. And like, I think Russ can be quote unquote good enough. But here's my thing. They do have the Bengals twice, whereas the Ravens don't. They still have the Eagles, which is probably an L, and they still have the Ravens again, and they have the Chiefs again. Is it time to pull the trigger on the Ravens to win the AFC North?
That is a tough schedule for the Steelers, and I haven't looked at the betting line on it, but if there's decent money, yeah, the
plus 160 DK. I'm going to check other books in a minute. Ravens have Chargers this week, Eagles the week after, Giants, Steelers, but you'd assume that they're like, if you're betting them to win this, you're betting them to beat.
It's really a head-to-head. Yeah.
Yeah. Texans, but you and I both think Texans are frauds, and the Browns. Eagles Ravens next week is going to be really good.
That should be a fun game.
If you think Baltimore wins the Har Bowl this week, if you think they do, and I mean they should, they're favored certainly. If you think they win that game this week, then you should probably. But I think the AFC North is sort of there for the taking for them, especially if you think the Bengals are going to be at least get a split against the Steelers. Okay. Do you want to make a case for any of these, any of these potential wildcard teams? Do you want to make a case for the Chargers? Do you want to make a case for the Broncos as doing like a meaningful thing in the playoffs?
I think the Chargers are always somebody that I want to see succeed, and they find miraculous ways to fail. But they have
got a better point differential than the Chiefs.
Yeah,
plus
they have
75 for them, 49 for the Chiefs.
J.K. Dobbins is finally the guy that we wanted to see in Baltimore. Quentin Johnston's getting involved more and more. Justin Herbert is still, he's still a quarterback from, what was it, 3 years ago? And they're basically getting the old Baltimore gang back together in LA, surrounding Herbert with some decent tools there, and it's working out so far. I can't really speak to their defense that well. Derwin James is always fun to watch.
They've only given up 145 points, but I feel like that's partially because they just play slow, plodding, methodical football. Although they're fourth in defensive EPA, fourth in defensive success rate. I mean, my concern with them is just that they're just like that. Harbaugh is a very good regular season coach, right? He's very good at getting players to play for him. He's very good at getting players to not make dumb mistakes that cost you regular season wins, right? But I just think, Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer are their like top tier receivers. I guess Ladd McConkey, right? Like, are they? I feel like Harbaugh is extracting the most out of this team. And like, if the most that they are a 5 seed, that's not like super exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, they're definitely at best a middle of the pack offense, and even that is probably giving them a bit too much credit. But the defense is so good. Now I'm looking at the statistics. They're first in defensive SRS, simple rating system. They have only allowed 145 points, which is the best in the AFC. I'm talking myself into it. Yeah,
they'd have to be probably Houston or Baltimore, Pittsburgh in round 1,
which I think they should be able to do.
If you think they can beat Baltimore, you should be betting the money line this Monday, right? Like,
that's an interesting
because at least this is going to be in LA, whereas they'll be going on the road on wildcard weekends.
I think I am taking them this week.
Oh, we'll get into that on the weekly pick show, which you can listen to right here if you subscribe and yada yada yada.
Like and subscribe.
Do you want to make? Okay, obviously one of the wild cards is going to be Pittsburgh or the Ravens, whoever gets there. Broncos are 6-5. Do you want to make a case like Bo Nix is not good enough to be a serious playoff contender? I'm sorry.
No.
Because the thing about Bo Nix is that he's an old quarterback, like he's an old rookie, which means that his floor right away was higher, but also means there's way less room to grow, and he is much closer to being the finished product that he is. Do you want to make a case for the Anthony Richardson-led Colts?
It's gonna be tough for them, simply because there's already
fucking sucks.
Well, there's the fact that Anthony Richardson is not actually very good, and there's also the fact that they have a 2-game hole against the Texans already in that South. Now,
I'm more mean to try and to run down the Broncos for that last wild card.
For the finals wild card.
They're probably going to lose to Detroit this week. Here's their May schedule. At New England, okay, that's a win. These two teams play each other. I guess that is kind of going to be the wild card bowl, but that's in Denver. Titans, Giants, Jaguars. Whole schedule is pretty fucking easy, man.
So yeah, it could really come down to the Horse Bowl.
Jesus. I just feel like people are going to overrate Richardson because he did it against a bad Jets team. But as the world's biggest Jets hater, that don't impress me much.
Yeah, so they're going to get.
I don't remember any of the words, but I know that the song is good.
So yeah, they really should win the majority of these games down the stretch, and it'll come down to whether or
Well,
not they can beat the
okay.
Broncos head to head.
They should if they're a good team, but like let's be real. What have the Colts done to prove that they just like should?
Well,
Like what have they proven that they're definitively better than, any of these teams?
and that's really the great thing about the Colts and their position is they have an opportunity, but they actually have to prove that they deserve it.
Yeah, they have it all in front of them.
Yeah.
Also, if you're gonna bet on them, and I honestly might bet them to make the playoffs, I am gonna wait until after they lose to Detroit because I'll get a better price. And frankly, like my win probability, like I am building in that they're gonna lose to Detroit, right? So like I'm not like I'll get a better price banking on a thing that I already believe to happen. And I've already priced in that it's gonna happen.
Okay, so based on next gen stats, NFL's next gen stats powered by AWS or whoever.
Why the fuck did you just decide to do an ad read in the middle of my podcast?
They have the Colts currently at 28% to make the playoffs. If they lose this game to Detroit, it drops to 22. So yeah,
it's not a great market price then. What is next gen stats powered by AWS have the Broncos at?
Currently 68. If they lose to Las Vegas, it'll go down to 50. If they win, it goes up to 74%.
I mean, there's a minus 125 available right now.
That is a tasty
what's
bet.
What's their schedule look like?
Well, they're playing the Raiders this week, and that immediately just jumps up their probability.
Yeah, I mean the Raiders are pretty fraudulent. Browns, Colts, Chargers, Bengals, but the Bengals might be out of it. Chiefs, but the Chiefs might be resting everybody.
The Broncos look like a nice bet at 125 to make the playoffs.
Am I really gonna bet my hard-earned dollars on Bo Nix? How good is this defense actually by the advanced stats? Third by defensive EPA, fifth by success rate. Can Bo Nix be a top 20 quarterback in the league?
I mean, this is all you need him to be is.
Oh, they're 21st in offense. 20. Oh God. 24th by EPA per play of quarterbacks who have done 176 plays this year. Let's see. If I indiscriminately go to like week 6, does Bo Nix get any better? Website's updating. I know this is great podcasting. I am aware. Sorry guys. Oh, since week 6 he's 8th. Cool. I'm betting it. Broncos.
There you go.
Broncos country.
Let's lock it in. Let's ride, Broncos.
Yeah. Broncos country.
But really, there's not much else in the AFC that I'm interested in.
Okay, so we think the Broncos are a good bet to make the playoffs at minus 125. Do we think they have a chance to like fuck shit up for like the Chiefs in a 2-7 game? Hypothetically, Bills.
I mean, luckily we'll get a preview of that.
Well, we might not. I mean, if the Bills have the 1 seat locked up, the Chiefs might just say fuck it and start. Is it still fucking Chad Henne? Who's the backup in Kansas City?
Chad Henne? I'm actually not sure. For the Kansas City Chiefs.
Chiefs backup QB. Oh, guess who it is?
Oh, of course. I did know this. Our good friend from North Dakota State University, Carson Wentz.
The guy, the only person who has ever been too religious for an NFL locker room. Oh, Anyways, do you actually think the Broncos can fuck shit up for either Buffalo or Kansas City?
I don't think that they can beat Buffalo. I do think that they would be an interesting game against the Chiefs.
I mean, they did just nearly beat Kansas City.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. It'll be fun in the playoffs when the Broncos do inevitably make it, lock it in at -125.
So you basically think the AFC is just a Bills, is just basically a Bills walkthrough, right?
Yeah, that's my impression right now. I
assume you're predicting a Bills-Eagles Super Bowl.
Bills Eagles would be my prediction, though. I do
but
have
you're
concerns.
massively being a homer about Philadelphia.
I do have concerns with the Eagles. I've said all season long that I don't think the Eagles make it out of the wild card, and I'm not changing how my heart feels about it.
So you both think they're a Super Bowl champion, or at least the NFC champion, but also going to lose to who the fuck's going to be the 7th? I mean, I guess you guys want Washington to the 7th seed, right?
That would be, I think so.
You fear Green Bay a hell of a lot more than you fear Washington, right?
I'm more afraid of Green Bay. I'm more afraid of the Vikings. I think I'd be more afraid of the Buccaneers, to be honest.
That's just trauma from like week 4 or whatever.
Yeah, but this is the duality of Eagles fandom. Nothing is ever safe.
Bill Simmons making Chris Ryan, Andy Greenwald, and Zach Barron do Silver Linings Playbook for the rewatchables last year when the Eagles season was falling apart, and running it on the day of wildcard weekend is one of the most diabolical things Simmons has ever done, and I love him so much for it. Thanks for coming on, buddy. At Arfin Nathaniel on Twitter. Are you joining me in the blue skies?
I have an account. I still have not said anything on it. I don't know that I do. I didn't know you had moved over.
I've been tweeting. No, I've mostly
Really?
just been posting columns, and I've mostly just been posting columns. This notion, by the way, that there's so much more interaction despite the limited follower count. That is not fucking true in my experience. It's just a bunch of people circle working themselves. But hey, if it gets me a few extra, if it gets me a couple extra 100 views on a column, I'll post there. But I'm still team.
I'll have to open a new window, and that seems like a whole ordeal.
Do you not have the app?
You want me to open a whole different app?
Just saying.
This is the thing. Is I don't change my routines, and it's going to be hard to pry me from the bad place.
I mean, dude, it's just like a lot of people are over egging the advantages of blue sky because they want it to be true, but it's not.
Yes.
Anyways, follow me on Twitter at Scrimshaw. I think it's at Scrimshaw on Blue Skies as well. Like and subscribe to this like this video. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Subscribe to my Substack at scrimshawscripted.substack.com. There will be an announcement probably next week about some sports writing that I'm going to be doing in the interim until somebody hopefully hires me to write about sports again. I guess Broncos country. Let's ride.
Let's ride. Yeehaw.
Also, is it don't impress me much. Is that Shania?
Shania?
Is it Shania?
Shania Twain?
I'm trying to figure out who that song is. I'm pretty sure it's Shania Twain, but I'm not positive.
I think it has to be, right?
I don't know. There's Oh, I shouldn't admit this in public. There's like a whole generation of female singers, sort of like Nashville country, sort of like pop adjacent. Not all of them are like country pop, but like Shania. Who's the one who has the TV show Kelly Clarkson? That all just sound the same. Mariah Carey.
Well, yeah.
The one from No Doubt, whose name is escaping me currently. They all just sound the same to me. Gwen Stefani. There's like a whole generation of those female singers, and I like a lot of their songs. Like if I hear them in public or whatever, like if I'm listening to a podcast in like a Sobeys or whatever, like I will, and then one of them comes on, but like they are just all the same person to me. Carrie Underwood is in this ring too. But like it's just one of these things where it's like they are all just the same person to me. And like I just can't keep them apart, and I don't care enough to, because I don't like the music like enough. But they're all just the same human to me. Do I sound insane?
I echo a lot of that sentiment. I do not know who. I don't know how to tell singers apart, just in general.
Well, that's just like a desert for me, because like my parents didn't particularly like. I didn't grow up listening to contemporary music, right? Like to the extent that I have like musical like memories as a child is like my mother playing Springsteen for the 4,000th time, or like Jackson Browne or the Beatles, more so than like anything from like the 90s or 2000s. And so I've had to backfill a lot of that like musical knowledge myself. And like I had to teach myself about Radiohead. Anyways, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thanks for having me.